This is Linda West with Living Live, and today I am here with Mark Lovett of TEDxSanDiego. He is known as Mr. TEDxSanDiego. Have you ever wanted to speak on stage and not sure what to do? Maybe you want to speak on a TEDx stage. Well, Mark is the man to tell you how to do this. So we're going to be talking about that. Then we're going to also be talking about, speaking, not only speaking on stage, but just speaking and telling your story. How can you tell your story with impact? It's so important. It's so valuable. Your stories that you have, many times people are like, well, I don't really have anything of value to share, but you really do. You have a story inside of you that people need to hear. And Mark helps people learn how to tell their story and make that impact. So we're going to be talking about that as well. I will start off letting you know that we have a barbecue grill that's going to be delivered during this broadcast. It was supposed to be delivered later today, but they moved it earlier. So we have a couple dogs who will start going bonkers, just going crazy when that gets delivered. So I'll just let you know in advance. So we might have the dogs barking. And then also, if you know anybody who is a speaker, anybody who aspires to be a speaker, please share this video out with them. Share it on their timeline or tag them here in this video here. Normally, I don't ask people to tag people because I don't really believe in doing that, but this is value that you're going to be able to give to them. So you want to make sure you share it with them. Sharing is caring. So this is Linda West. And again, welcome, Mark. I'm really excited to have you here today. We're doing round 2. We tried it last week and the internet service wasn't good enough where we were. So we put it to this platform and here we are today. Mark, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Linda. Thanks for having me.
Well, Mark, I want to get into right into how did you become known as Mr. TEDxSanDiego?
I guess it's because you said it, so that must be true. I've been
it's on the internet. It's true.
Yeah, I've been organizing TEDxSanDiego for the past 5 years, and we've put on a number of events. 4 of them were downtown at Symphony Hall, and so those were very large events. And just a week and a half ago, we put on our last event, which was at the Salk Institute, and that one was focused just on biology. We had a stage full of scientists and researchers talking about some of the latest breakthroughs in biology that are happening right here in our own city, because San Diego is one of the epicenters of biological research in the whole world.
And periodically, I'm going to look down to make sure my microphone isn't muted because I can't see. So as far as doing TEDx, how did you get into TEDx? I know it was by kind of like one of those, you had your arm tied kind of thing. So why don't you tell the story about how you got into, doing the TEDx thing?
Well, it's like everything in my life. It was purely an accident. It was never on my to-do list, nothing that I planned. But I was consulting for an individual who ended up starting TEDxSanDiego back in 2010. For people who don't know, the TEDx program was just initiated in 2009. So TEDxSanDiego was one of that first wave to come through. And so I saw his event and watched the speakers on stage, and I saw how amazing it was. Kind of like the difference between a rock concert and a music video. The energy's different, you're right there, the speaker's looking at you. And so a couple years into his event, he asked me to co-organize for him, to be his number 2. And I did that thinking, hey, what's the risk? And then when the show was over, he slipped something into my glass of wine, and I woke up the next day and I had the license of San Diego. So I've been putting on TEDxSanDiego ever since.
What would you say is your favorite part of doing the event? I do know, you shared with me, that this is a volunteer organization. So you do this because you love it, or you're just crazy, or a combination, or what?
It would be the latter. Certifiably insane is probably the best description.
Yeah.
We are an all-volunteer team. That is a rule of TED. And so none of us gets paid. We're not allowed to pay our speakers, and we're not allowed to put our partners who give us money on stage. So there's basically a firewall between the content and any finance that happens. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, so the funnest part for me is actually hearing the stories of the speakers, working with them, finding them, locating what their idea worth spreading is, And then seeing after many months, they show up on stage in front of a live audience and share their wisdom with the world.
And what is it that you look for, like when you're looking for a speaker to speak? Because I know that a lot of people apply, but then also you're out there looking for people who might be that person to bring in. So what is it? What would you, can you like give us maybe a couple of things that are the things that you're looking for?
So the TED tagline is an idea worth spreading. So it should be something concrete, something that you can describe to the audience. It could be a viewpoint on a topic. It could be a solution to a problem. It could be something that you developed if you're an entrepreneur. But it should be something that the audience hasn't heard before or hasn't seen before. And then that's combined with our theme, because every year we have a theme. And around that theme, we pick a number of topics. So, I'll typically look at hundreds of applications to find a dozen speakers, because I'm looking for topics that just resonate with me in that moment. And many times there are people who don't end up on my stage, but they end up on another TEDx stage, or they end up on my stage in 2 or 3 years down the road, because that is the moment, that's the time when their idea, I think, really should be on stage. So if you have an idea that's common, we get a lot of people who say, oh, I have the secret to leadership. Well, the secret to leadership's been done about 4,000 times. So it doesn't mean you can't do another one, but you have to have a unique spin on what leadership is. Something different than all the other talks, different than all the other books.
And would you say that most of your people come in then through the application process? And if so, how can somebody apply to be a TEDx speaker? And do you recommend that whether you think you have that new idea or not, that you should apply? Because I don't want like you to get flooded with a whole bunch of people who maybe aren't ready yet. But what do you think about people just applying to see if maybe you guys say, this person is ready?
Well, part of the application process, and you can apply on our website at TEDxSanDiego.com. It's right under the Participate tab. But what we look for is someone who has a very clear idea that they want to spread. So you really have to know what you're going to talk about before you should spend any time applying. Otherwise, we'll look at it and say, so what? They don't have an idea that we think our audience would want to hear. We open our form all year long, so people can apply anytime. Last year, there were 3,800 TEDx events in 170 countries. So they're all over the world. So like I said, many people that I know have ended up on other stages. I was in Wilmington, Delaware last year watching one of my clients speak. Another one's going to be speaking at TEDx Santa Barbara in a month or so. So it depends on those organizers and what they're looking for, because every single TEDx is independently run. We all look for our own speakers. So there's no way to apply to every TEDx in the world. There's no central repository. You have to do some homework and figure out where you want to speak, and then figure out how they set up their application process.
Okay, so then with all the different locations that there are, the opportunities to speak out there, you just Google TEDx and find out where all the different websites are. Go find out what their theme is, and if you fit that theme, then apply for it. Would that be like the simplicity of it?
That's one way to do it.
For simplicity.
Yeah. You can go to the TED website at TED.com.
Okay.
And I think there's a tab on there that says attend, and there'll be a menu item for TEDx. And you go to that, and it'll show you a map of the entire world, and it'll show you every single TEDx event that's coming up. And there's a little tab on that page that shows you every TEDx event that's ever happened. So you can select, and it's kind of limited on what you can do, but you could put in California, and it'll show you just events in California. Or you could put in Portugal or France. Some people who are bilingual or have heritage in another country, sometimes those organizers are open to finding an American speaker to have them on their stage. For example, there was someone here locally who was on my list of, hey, I'm going to watch this guy and maybe someday he'll be on my stage. And a year went by, and all of a sudden I get an email from an organizer in France that says, hey, one of my speakers says he knows you. And it was this guy that I had been tracking. So somebody in France found his project, found what he was doing, and said, come over here and do a TEDx talk. So
that's great.
Yeah, there's opportunities everywhere.
Yes, you just don't know, right? So make sure you're prepared when you apply. It's not like, I've done some shoot in the dark kind of things. Like when I was working in corporate, I applied for jobs like, I don't think I'm qualified for this, but I'm going to apply anyway. So this is probably not one of those instances that I might want to do a shoot in the dark, right? I want to make sure I'm ready, that when you guys see my application, they're like, okay, we need to get her on our stage.
Right. Because with a job application, you might say, I'm a PhD, I'm an astrophysicist, I've been doing this 20 years. And the employer says, wow, that's the kind of talent we want here to do a lot of things. With TEDx, you want that person to do one single thing, to get up on stage and have a great talk. So we're not looking for your qualifications other than, is this person well-versed in their subject? So for the event that we just did at the Salk Institute, 8 out of 11 speakers were PhDs, they were researchers, they were scientists, they were CEOs. They did this for a living. So they really knew their stuff and knew what they were talking about.
Okay, cool. Now, you're watching the replay or you're watching live. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment below. And then Mark will get back to you on those at a later date. So go ahead and do that. And again, share this. If you know anybody who's interested in speaking on a TEDx stage, whether it's San Diego or some other part of the world, go and share this video with them, because they do, like he said, how many countries did you say? 170?
170 countries. And there's also...
Wow. So you think about it, there's lots of opportunities.
Yeah, and there's different types of events.
Go ahead.
So TEDxSanDiego is what I would call a regular event. And those are all over the world. I've met organizers from Tehran and Mogadishu, as well as Singapore and Sydney. But there's also university events. So locally, we have TEDx UCSD and TEDx SDSU. So if your message would resonate more with a college crowd, then go search out those TEDx's. And there's even youth events. We're going to do a youth event in February, which is just going to be high school students. And that's high school students in the audience and high school students on stage. So depending on your message, there's both countries and cities, but there's also universities and even high schools.
So as far as, like, let's say you have a student, how are they finding out about the TEDx for the students, the youth one?
So the one that's going to be here in San Diego.
Besides this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. We are working with the superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, and we are going to reach out to I think 25 or 26 of their campuses and enlist some of their leadership to say, who wants to watch the event? Because we're going to have to pick students from all these different high schools. And then who has an idea worth spreading? And we haven't figured out yet how we're going to approach that, like an application process, probably a live audition. And from that, we'll pick 12 to 15 students to end up being on stage. So they're going to hear about it. Anybody who's a student at San Diego Unified, that'll come up.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, are other cities doing the same kind of thing with the youth, or are you guys starting this, or how's that working?
No, there's been youth events all over the world. So once again, if you go back to TED.com and do a search, you can type in the word university, or you can type in the word youth, and it will show you all of those events. So youth events are becoming extremely popular. I see them popping up in cities coast to coast and in countries, far and wide.
That's fantastic. Getting the youth started young, getting people started young doing stuff like this it's a great confidence builder, if nothing else, I would say. Now we have Angie. Welcome, Angie, to the show. She says she's always wanted to speak on TED Talks. So today we're talking about, specifically TEDx, which is a different kind of thing than TED Talks. Do you want to tell, just briefly, the difference between TED Talks and TEDx?
Yeah, sometimes people use them interchangeably, just because people aren't clear on the differences. But the TED organization was founded in 1984. So it's been around over 3 decades. But it was just back in 2009 that they decided to allow individuals in their own city to produce a TED-like experience. So we follow the same rules as TED. Speakers are on stage, they're speaking to an audience, it's a maximum of 18 minutes. All of the talks are recorded. In our case, we upload all of our talks to TED in New York. And they review every talk, and then they publish them on the TEDx YouTube channel. So you can apply to speak on the TED stage also. There's a form on the TED website to do that. But as you might imagine, they have tens of thousands of people applying, and they probably have 60 to 70 slots in their annual conference, which lasts for 5 days. But many people who end up on the TED stage started out on a TEDx stage. Because if somebody gives a really amazing TEDx talk, somebody in New York might say, wow, look at that person. I want to talk to them. I want to see if they can come to our annual event and do a talk on the big stage.
Mm-hmm. And this is awesome because I know the volunteer organization, 600 talks last year alone, 170 countries. It's turned into this just really huge, amazing platform for people to have an opportunity to share their ideas that are worth spreading. So let's talk though about, I want to switch to the speaking part of it, because what I understand, and you can explain a little better on this, is that, well, first of all, you have, Storytelling with Impact is a company that you have. And so you want to talk about how you started that. And then I want to talk about how when people apply for TEDx and they're accepted, that there's an opportunity for them to be trained by you or somebody else on the TEDx staff, volunteer staff.
Right. So everyone who speaks at TED gets a speaker coach, and they work with them for 3, 6, 9 months, even longer, to really hone in on what is the idea they want to spread, and then crafting a narrative that's going to get that idea delivered to the public who's in the audience, not just in the theater, but because the videos are published, people around the world are going to hear this story. So from a TEDx perspective, it's not a requirement to provide speaker coaches, but the majority of TEDx organizers do. So at TEDxSanDiego, with the event at the Salk, it turned out that I coached all 11 speakers because it was all on one topic of biology, and I wanted to be sure that the talks were different enough. But at my main event, we'll usually have 5 or 6 speaker coaches who will each take a couple of speakers and work with them from 3 to 6 months to really get their story down and get the rehearsal down so that they know how to deliver on stage. Even people who are professional speakers, a TEDx is different. It's a different type of stage, a different type of delivery. It's not a keynote speech. It's not a technical talk. So sometimes we have to pull people out of their comfort zone to really learn how the TEDx platform works.
So how do you, that's interesting because I hadn't thought about that. So you are training them specifically for the TEDx event. So does that mean that they wouldn't be able to pull that speech that you guys have helped them on to speak on other stages, or they can also incorporate that onto other stages as well?
Well, they can tell that story or a similar story in other venues, but never on another TEDx stage.
Oh.
So this is one of the differences. If you're a keynote speaker, and I just coached a keynote speaker who's been keynoting for 25 years, we crafted a new talk around his new book. And now he's out on the circuit. And every week he's giving 2 or 3 keynotes with that same talk in front of all these different groups.
Okay.
That's a different format. With TEDx, because all the videos go online, you never, ever, ever want to see the same person giving the same talk 3 or 4 times, and all the videos come out and they're all the same.
Right.
So it's also typical that a speaker would never speak at more than one TEDx per year. So somebody like
Let me
Simon.
ask you a question on that.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say,
I'll ask a question about that.
Yeah, somebody like Simon Sinek, who a lot of people know. He actually spoke on our TEDxSanDiego stage in 2010. This was before he became uber famous and before TED discovered him and TED put him on their stage. So over the years, he's done, I think, 2 TEDx talks and 2 TED talks, but they're on different topics. Well, one's on kind of finding your why, another one's on leadership. So there are people who are authors, and every time they come out with a book, they'll craft a new talk and they'll try to get on a stage. So there are people with multiple TEDx talks, but the talks are very different.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question, because you mentioned that for example, you mentioned the gentleman who has been a keynote speaker for 25 years, and then he comes to speak on your stage, and so you coach him. Just wondering, have you had any encounters with people, keynote speakers, like, oh, I don't need your training, I got this kind of thing? Just wondering, that kind of personality.
Well, part of the selection process is that we interview every potential speaker. And we would never put a speaker on our stage that had that kind of attitude. And you run into it occasionally, but it's actually pretty rare. Most people understand that TEDx is different. And I've had people who have been speaking for decades, and they say, wow, I've really been looking forward to this. I don't want to give the same talk. I really want to learn how this new technique can help me give better talks elsewhere. Because the thing about TEDx is that it's not just a bunch of facts. It's a story. It's real data that happened, but it's wrapped in a story. So it's your experience, but it's told in a story format. It's more like a movie rather than a newspaper. And so everyone that I've ever coached comes away saying, this was amazing. I now have a whole new way to speak to audiences.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. Now let's flip to storytelling with impact. You want to tell us how you started that and what you're doing with it? What do you see as the future for it?
So half of my time is spent putting on TEDx events, which is all volunteer. And the other half of my time is my own business, which is storytelling with impact. And within that, I do a variety of things. I teach a class at UCSD Extension, which you can just Google UCSD, Storytelling with Impact, you'll find me. So that's a cool way for people to develop a story in 6 sessions in front of other people. So it's really fun. And then I do storytelling workshops with foundations, with corporations, where they want some of their employees to learn basics of storytelling. And then I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, which is when I take an individual and we work through a number of sessions to define the idea and then define the talk. And that came about just because of all my work with TEDx, that people kept asking me to do these workshops and to coach them. And so now I've left behind my corporate consulting work, and now that's all I do is storytelling of some form or another, from the moment I wake up till I collapse at night. Storytelling.
That's so awesome. Did you ever that you were a storyteller, or was that again, you just kind of like discovered that through people asking you to help them?
So I've always loved storytelling from the time I was very young. When I was 10 years old and I went to bed at night, I had this old AM radio that I had gotten for Christmas. So that's how old I am. I'm going back to AM radio. And there was a radio station that played these old radio dramas, things like The Green Hornet and The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So I loved putting this little earpiece in my ear and having this announcer tell me a story. It would basically put a movie into my head. I could see London on a foggy night, and I could hear the sound of footsteps coming down the street. And then to hear all the narration of Sherlock Holmes and these other characters. So from an early age, I had this respect for how storytelling can affect us. And then I spent decades in the corporate world, wearing a variety of hats, and at all times doing one type of storytelling or another within the company. So it came natural to me to do what I'm doing today. But the coaching one-on-one, I did discover that I have a unique ear to hear what people are saying and to kind of read between the lines and help them flesh out an even richer story. So the idea that we start with is very different than the complete narrative that we end up with. And it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left. So what should I have asked you that I didn't ask you? Or what tips for maybe like starting their story or getting out there and speaking their story on stage?
So I tell people they should live their passion all the time, whenever they can. So if you have a story to tell, or you think you're an expert at something, or you have something that can improve other people's lives, you should be telling that story wherever you can. At breakfast meetings, at conferences, at little groups that get together. I do speaking in front of a wide variety of folks. You know, I was at Startup Week San Diego. I get invited to speak at conferences now and then. So whether I get paid or not, I love the process of speaking because I want to talk about storytelling. I'm evangelizing storytelling, and it helps me become a better storyteller. So TEDx San Diego, or any TEDx or any TED stage, it's one platform that's nice to be on, but you should try to have your story on as many platforms as possible.
Yeah, get out there and speak, share your story because it inspires other people to do the same thing. I'll just really quick story that, I'll tell a little story is that I was on a cruise ship, several years ago, probably about 10 years ago. And they were doing karaoke, and I had never done karaoke before. And I was like, I'll never see these people again. I'm going to go ahead and do the karaoke. So I got up there. The song that I chose was YMCA. And I had no idea YMCA is a 4.5-minute song, by the way. But I was up there and I was dancing, doing the YMCA dance and all that stuff. And I was so out of breath. And I was like, wow, this song is really long. But when it got done, I was known for the next 10 days because of a 10-day cruise as Lady. And so it's just kind of a fun thing to share. But here's what happened that was so absolutely amazing. And I had no idea because I was just up there, having a good time. There was a young man in the audience. He was about 16 years old, and he was there that night with his grandmother, and he got up on stage and sang. Now, it was atrocious. He was very monotone, and you could hardly hear him, but he got up there and he did it. And his grandmother came up to me and said, you know what? Thank you so much. You gave my grandson the courage to get up there and sing. And I was like, wow, all I did is get up there and have fun. But he saw that I was not very good. Could get up there and do it because it wasn't like I was a Celine Dion or anybody like that. And it gave him that confidence. So each night of the cruise, he got up there and sang. By the 10th night, he was much better. So the point is, we need to get ourselves out there, share our story, because we're going to inspire somebody and motivate somebody to do something. Maybe it's just motivating them to make a step towards something that they're not doing. Maybe it's motivating them to get on stage themselves. Who knows? But the thing is, if you don't get out there and tell your story, you're not going to be motivating as many people. You will motivate people in your own life, from day to day, but you impact so many more lives when you're putting yourself on a stage or on a live video just like this. So Mark, I want to thank you so much. And I'm glad we had this chance, to do our second round and to share about, the TEDx opportunities that lie out there. You saw there are 3,600 last year and 170 countries. You can get out there, but find those platforms that work for you, that you have, the fit for them, and don't do what I tend to do, which is just like a spray and pray. Don't do that. Good advice, Mark.
Excellent advice. And really know your topic. really be passionate about it, really have an idea that's articulate, that an organizer would look at and go, wow, that's something I want my audience to hear.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Now you can find Mark at storytellingwithimpact.com. I put it on the screen there, storytellingwithimpact.com. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to him. If you aren't sure if you want to reach out to him or not, reach out to me first, then I'll just make you reach out to him. So just go straight to Mark, And
Yep.
Mark, I look forward to seeing you around San Diego and finding out when the next TEDx San Diego is, and look forward to hearing like how I can volunteer to help your organization out. So thank you so much. This is Linda West with Living Live with Mark Lovett. He's Mr. TEDx San Diego and of Storytelling with Impact. You guys have a wonderful day now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.